And we are going free and a bit of an experiment. I don't know how many of you all were with me this past Sunday, but I discussed doing these short, spur of the moment, impromptu type of going free videos about specific topics that people are asking about and trying to perhaps shorten the going free episodes on Sundays. Perhaps we'll do some more cursory look at what we covered during the week, perhaps something completely different, but this is a bit of an experiment, I guess, as well as a sharing of important information. How are you all doing today? Can everybody hear me okay? I see Sonia and Seaver is here. Great to see you. Sterling is here. Jan Uniter is here. I don't think I've seen Jan in a while. Bigot Smalls is here. I believe I can be heard. I'm still firing up some of the computers and the tech here in the background. I will be on avatar rather than on camera on most or probably all of these shorter going free episodes during the week, as opposed to what happens on Fridays. I'm still streaming to all of the platforms that I normally stream to, but we are going to be a little bit more laid back. Soap is here. Chain Reaction, great to see you. Mr. Fancy. LG is here. Great to see you. Hugh, hello, hello, hello. Ryan Manley. Jason is here. Great name. Fernell is here. Great to see you, my good sir. All right. I presume everybody can hear me okay. Southern Bloom is here. As I say, I'm still trying to get things set up. I'm very busy, but I am going to start making this time available, irrespective of the state I am in. And that is why, at least in part, we are not going to be on the camera. So let me see what else we have going on. I want to make sure I get everybody's. Mr. Fancy says, I love your channel. Well, thank you so very much. Kenneth is here. Great to see you. Coconut is here. Hello indeed. Is Laurel here? Coconut is saying hello to her. Oh, there she is. What a nice surprise. Indeed. Well, these are going to be these impromptu episodes, and they also, for me, are serving a bit of another purpose as well, which is Jared George and I have some ideas, some things we are investigating that potentially we'll do in the future, and we want to try several things out. Some of that is still a secret, but let me see. I want to say hello to everybody over there. There's Roy, the great Roy Danton. Roy, you have to send me do you have my email? Yes, you have my email, right, Roy? Send me an email so that I can send you the picture of my workstation. I believe I sent it out to everyone else who asked for it the other day. The workstation, which I will provide again in its blurry glory right here. And that is what everyone gets to see, those who contribute with their talents, efforts, time, or money to the cause of white well-being get to see the clear version. I see George is here, Tim is here, Ryan is here, Shay. Great to see you all showing up here. We're going to keep this short tonight, so if you have things you want to say, Ryan, great to see all the pumpkins. We're coming very close. The energy is now in the air for autumn and Halloween, and the energy that seems to speak particularly to our people during this time of year. Tipsy is here. Siege is here. Wilhelmina, great to see you. I know you probably have been here, and I've been missing you in the chat. So it's splendid to see you. If you all have anything, Maria's here. Great to see you. If you all have anything specifically that you would like to address while I am going to be briefly with you all this evening, make sure you get to it quickly because this is going to be short. This is not going to be a 3 to 4 hour going free episode. Oh, I see. Now there's Shauna saying, sounds great. Can hear you fine. That's fantastic. Thank you all for the feedback. Well, I don't know if you all have heard, or how many, why don't you tell me, how many of you have heard about the soldier who was arrested the other day, just a couple days after the DHS revealed to the public that they were going to classify white nationalism, white nationalist speech, pro-white speech. This is very specific terminology, as targeted violence. And then under that rubric, they were going to slide it under the rubric of terrorism, which, of course, long before you are arrested for something like terrorism, you can be put onto other lists, such as no-fly lists and other sorts of travel restriction lists, lists when it comes to whether or not you can buy a firearm. So these things are important. And I explained during this past Sunday that what was particularly pertinent for those of us who are going free is that we are in the only refuge there is for those who care about white well-being, that will last longer than anything else. And the reason why is that the moment that the anti-whites decide that they are going to make it illegal to care for our own welfare, that will be the moment that the anti-whites create a context in which everything changes for them, the context on which they depend today and tomorrow for their continued domination becomes untenable when they shift, or if they shift, to a context in which they can make it illegal to be for white well-being, to love one's community, to serve one's community, and do so in a way that is clearly a representation of what and who we really are, which is a focus on our people, our children, our culture, loving who and what we are, inheriting what is rightfully ours, and passing on to our children what we have a right to pass on to them. That they cannot make illegal, that they cannot arrest people for, because, as I say, that will change the context. All of this other terminology, this old terminology, these old legacy ideas, this focus on the misdeeds of other groups, these things can be personal studies for individuals, and they can play a part in the strategy of those with us within our own circles, when it comes to strategizing, protecting ourselves from external forces. But this idea of focusing, putting really the focus in the wrong place, which is on anger for other groups, rage for other groups, rather than on the love for ourselves, and therefore the protecting of ourselves from all victimizers, large and small, from anywhere on planet Earth. This other focus is the big difference. And I know it may seem like there's not a big difference, but trust me, it's not a big difference about verbiage on a piece of paper. It's not a big difference about whether or not an anti-white will see that there's any difference. The big difference lies in the psychology and the psyche of the middle class of the Western countries, the broad, white, working, fighting, military, keeping the lights on, paving the roads, white middle class, keeping the water flowing of the Western nations. The moment you cross this line, which seems quite thin to some, may seem transparent to others because of personal prejudices, or perhaps weak intelligence, or whatever it might be, the moment that the anti-white elites, they know this line very well. The moment they cross that line, they have changed things fundamentally for themselves. So therefore, that is a line that I have identified and know they won't cross without suffering in a completely different context than they have today, a context that they rely on for their power. So you are going to be safe here. I know, and perhaps I'll touch on the DHS document again during this week, another short episode such as this, and we will take another look at the document as we did this past Sunday. and maybe talk about some different aspects of it. But a number of you, quite a few of you, have reached out to me with concern, just concern, over what the DHS is going to be doing, much more akin to the FBI, what the FBI is already doing, what presumably the CIA, even though they are not supposed to be operating within the continental United States, is presumably doing as well. The DHS and perhaps some other bureaucracies will be involved in the future, moving forward with these proclamations. But know that if, as long as you stay within the framework of white well-being, the lexicon, the dialectics, the focus of who and what we are on our well-being, on our families, on our future, on our past, on defining ourselves, you will be safe all of the way until the end, which is either going to be us recapturing our destiny, because this curative contagion has been released into the public and reached into the hearts of our people and is spreading now, or it would be a decision made by the anti-whites to cross that horrible line into a new context that will jeopardize their power and really throw the throw the country and other Western nations into, if they do the same in those nations, into a turmoil that is at present difficult to even imagine. So that's not a state that they want. So you are safe here. You are safe with this lexicon. You are safe with this verbiage. And we welcome everyone in the white positive sphere to be redeemed. We know that a great many of our brothers and sisters have succumbed to the anti-white caricature of what it means to be a person who is white positive. And so they have donned specific clothing. They have drawn tattoos on themselves of specific types, hanged certain flags or hung certain flags, and spoken with certain verbiage, specifically the verbiage that has now been demonized in all of the movies and TV shows and books and articles at universities, etc. These things now, using these things moving forward, is going to become increasingly dangerous for you. Using these old terminologies are going to become increasingly dangerous for you to use, because these are going to be the things that, in their endeavor, in the anti-white endeavor to criminalize you and punish you before you potentially commit any sort of crime, these will be the markers that they will use. So you are safe here. You are safe with us. And I cannot see at any point in the foreseeable future the anti-whites crossing the Rubicon and changing the context in a way that jeopardizes their power. But there is something that is going on. I see Irish Rose has super chatted £2. Top of the morning to you as well. Beautiful to see you. Very early for you. Are you up this early? I presume that you are somewhere in the UK, but if you are up this early, you are definitely an early riser. Let's see what Tipsy says. Thoughts on the whole climate change debacle, clogging up all of my feeds. Well, of course, what is happening, and I think this is, Irish Rose also said hello before super chatting, so hello back to you. Splendid having you here. Calamar Talks says hello to you as well. Chad, I'm glad you feel that energy too. No white guilt. It's palpable. It is indeed palpable. So the climate, I think really what needs to be said here is something that will benefit you. And Tim asks, Jason, are you on PWR tomorrow? I am indeed. You will see me there with Mark and Patrick, and we're going to have a splendid, exciting show. Works harder. Hello to you. What will be beneficial to you all, whether you believe in anthropogenic global warming or not, and I use the word believe because it takes a bit of faith to believe that mankind is altering the climate in the way that is claimed by these different groups. Interestingly enough, the anti-white groups Quite a few anti-white groups are the ones that are advancing this and demanding world governance, global solutions for global problems. Very interesting. But what will matter for you is not to get into these debates about whether or not there is anthropogenic global warming. That is something that you're just going to waste your time on. And what we need to be doing is helping our mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters to go free. And so if somebody brings this up in conversation, the best thing to do is to focus on, at the moment, the best thing to do is to focus on the child abuse that the anti-whites are inflicting on this child, that they are using as a mouthpiece for their agenda. Point out that they are using this handicapped child, this mentally retarded child, and there's nothing funny. I know a lot of people who are simple pleasures for simple minds. They are telling many jokes, a great many jokes about this retarded young girl. Don't do that. Don't smirk. Don't laugh. Talk about the horror of the anti-whites having absolutely no moral compass, no ethical compass, and that they are willing to use a mentally retarded child as a mouthpiece for their efforts to achieve their objectives, because they know that it will be virtually impossible to criticize a mentally retarded little girl. That is a calculated move by the anti-whites. And then you can segue that conversation into hate hoaxes, hush crimes, anything else you like, anything else that might be pertinent to that audience, whether it's one or many people that you're speaking with, to help them find the trail and begin to go free. That is what is important. These conversations, and whether or not there actually is a smaller ice cap or it's melting on the north but growing on the south, and all of this other stuff is totally immaterial for our lives. We have no influence over it. We have no data that can come to us objectively. Everything is being filtered through this anti-white subjectivity. All of the people around you are being told that it is real, that it's mankind's fault. If they really want to press you on it, you can point to China and India being the biggest transgressors. These are countries that are building dirty coal plants at the rate of several a week, and polluting the oceans, rivers that burn day and night and never stop. You can redirect them to those countries so that they won't get lost in how much more harm they can inflict on Western civilization. You could also point to the fact that the West wouldn't have as much of a carbon footprint or what have you if it weren't for the many hundreds now of millions across the West of border crossers that have come in from the third world, who back in their home countries used next to zero electricity, had a shed made out of corrugated metal, and ate chickens that they reared themselves. Now they come to the United States, or they come to Germany or what have you, and they have a car that they drive to and from a job with electricity, and the house has electricity and running water. All of this, the power that runs the electricity in the house, all of this massively, many tens of thousands of times fold, raises the carbon footprint of every single immigrant. So if you want to talk about that, you can segue into that. But really, what you need to do is get them off of a debate about whether or not it's real or how real, and get them into the process of going free. That's what we're doing. If you looked at my tweets, saw any of my tweets today, or if you don't follow me on Twitter and you have a Twitter account, you should. But if you saw some of my tweets today, I gave a specific example. I tweeted an individual's responses to a tweet that I had shared of a white man in South Africa who had he had done nothing wrong. He had, other than being a member of Western kind and in the anti-white narrative. And so he was beaten, he was stripped naked. This is on the streets of the city. The people that were walking the streets, as I point out, are not They're not thugs in the ghetto. They're not, and yes, I know I missed a T in the word ghetto. I saw that. But these are not the sorts of individuals that you would expect to see this from, or you would get the excuse from anti-whites or vagues that, oh, well, these are just violent people who live in the inner city. All the rest are quite. No, these people are in sweaters. These people are in slacks. That set upon this guy and slams cinder blocks on his head as he begs. He holds his arms up and begs for his life, and they deny him his life because he's a member of Western kind. And then we had this guy who tweeted a comment back to me, or responded to that tweet, and he said a number of things that were absolutely despicable, justifying the murder and of this innocent white man. And I used the opportunity to share with you all exactly what was being said there and how not to respond, what he was actually saying, and how not to respond to those things because they are inconsequential tangents. I used him instead to educate. And that's the same thing that you all should do when you go into a conversation with an anti-white. If that anti-white can't be helped, can't be brought around to going free, if it's going to be a big chore or next to impossible, just move on to the next white person that you can find and help them. There will be a great many more. As I say, this curative contagion is spreading like wildfire. But we've had a lot of debates about this admonition that we have seen in the white positive sphere on the fringes of engaging in violence. And of course, we here in the pursuit of white well-being reject violence, and we reject that anything good will come from violence. That is always, has always, and will always be our stance. We don't want innocent people harmed. We want the violence to end. We want the anti-whites to stop victimizing us. We want these discriminatory laws and policies that are in place that work to the harm of the work to the ill-being of Western kind. We want these repealed. We want these removed, rather than harming anyone else, ourselves. So, but there are some out there that instead argue that there should be some sort of aggression, and they do so in some cases openly. They do so in some cases by implication, by saying that the United States is ripe to fall. There are only so many police per so many citizens. And if a war breaks out, if a civil war breaks out, or there will be one, they say, then it'll be an easy victory. It'll happen overnight. And you can easily, it'll happen overnight because the conservative-minded, patriotic-minded people are the ones with firearms, as though the anti-white elites wouldn't just take dump trucks of fully automatic weapons, rocket launchers, which are called laws, and everything else under the sun, and just dump those off to any community that they wanted to fight for their interests. But nonetheless, that there would somehow be a civil war without a center mass around which the fighters for a resistance could orbit, that it would somehow magically, but that they're playing upon wishes. They're playing upon stupidity. They're playing upon myopia when they say these sorts of things, that there could be a civil war, when in reality they know very well that without a body around which for people to rally, to orbit, etc., there could not be such a thing. And I've argued again and again, and in fact, when this sort of debate first got started, I made the statements that I've made several times, I'm going to mention again tonight, that these individuals, first of all, you're not going to take down the United States. This is pure asininity. You are not going to even harm a county by blowing up a few feet of railroad. You are not going to, this particular individual talked about taking out a few cell phone towers. That isn't even going to harm a county. That is pathetic. It is not going to engender or start some sort of war that somehow right-wingers will magically win without any leadership, without a head. This is the fantastic musings of children. So I said what would happen to these individuals is that they would end up talking to, and there was a lot of responses. I said you're going to get if you talk about these sorts of things, you're going to get arrested. That's what's going to happen. And then people in the chat said, "Oh, well, no, because now there's all this encryption." And I said, first of all, the federal government is going to get through all of your encryption. Have no doubt about that. But secondly, the guy on the other end of that encryption is going to be working for the federal government. And what happened, I think 3 days later after I said that, a soldier in Maryland was arrested I said in that video, I said in on one of those shows that these guys are just sitting in their basements collecting weapons and MREs, and they're talking to other individuals like themselves and to law enforcement whom they think are legitimate revolutionaries like themselves. And sure enough, that's exactly what was happened with this individual. He was dragged out of his home, weapons everywhere. And what did that do for us? Well, there was another sweep of censorship. It was used as an excuse for more censorship. People like myself, Jared George, Poseidon, and the rest censored as a result of an idiot thinking that he is going to bring down the United States by taking out a power line or a water fountain somewhere. And that then as soon as he did this, then suddenly there would magically be a resistance that would function without a nervous system, that would function without a brain, and it would somehow tear down. And then these individuals who have been saying that this is the way things would happen would suddenly appear with a rewritten document, and somehow that document would enforce itself for all time, and we would never have a problem again. You absolutely need to eschew this thinking. You are going to go to jail. Don't talk about it. Always object to it. Turn your back on it. If you didn't listen to me before, I still have my hand out to you. I forgive you, and I welcome you into the fold. I want to redeem you. I want to bring you to White Wellbeing. I want you to turn away from such lunacy, because your life is going to be ruined, and everyone who cares about you, their lives are going to be ruined when you are swept off to some maximum security prison for the next 50 or 100 years, never to see the light of day again. So let me see what you all are saying, and I'm going to begin reading this article. I was going to put the article up on the screen, but then I thought better of it. Maybe I'll wait until someone else who is targeted like myself by the anti-whites to do this, to see if YouTube will immediately just yank the channel. I know that other channels can do that, but the difference is that they are either not doing anything good for White Wellbeing, they're not serving us, building a community as we are, or they are sowing poison pills into everything else that they're saying. Not saying that they are working for the federal government. And I say the same thing about these individuals who also are saying that it would be advantageous to blow up a power line, or to, what have you, or to throw a Molotov cocktail. I'm not saying that any of those people are in the employ of any government or even any private entity, of which we know has practically infinite sums compared to the kind of money that we earn as working class people. I'm not saying that they're working for anyone, but I will tell you this. We have seen from the revealed data by the federal government, all of this, of course, for my YouTube censors, may or may not be true. You all can look into it for yourself, but there have been revelations about the CIA and steering and this is the important word, is steering, because a body such as the FBI or CIA or DHS, they don't have to show up at your door and say, let's conspire. I'm going to give you some money and you're going to say X, Y, or Z or something. They don't have to do that. In fact, that is a very low IQ'd way to run such an operation. The best way to run such an operation is with the participants not knowing that they are participating. You simply punish the behavior that you don't want to see more of, and it comes from the ether when it happens to people, and you reward the behavior that you would like to see more of. This is the 200 IQ method of control. That's what the CIA did. It may or may not be true. You all can look into it. And that is the exact same thing that you know is going on today. Now, is it happening with any specific individuals that we could or cannot name here? Who knows? But the bottom line is that if I were to talk, I think you all probably know the answer to this. If I were to suggest that anyone commit any sort of act or violence, even though I say that I'm opposed to it, that we know it would do nothing but harm our cause, if I were to imply that it would be easy to defeat the United States, or if I were to state that, and here are some methods about it, about how easy it would be defeated. Here are some ways about how easy it could be defeated. And then once some little act took place, then some grandiose thing would happen, and we would just take back the country. If I were to say something like that, you would hear me dragged away from this microphone. This broadcast wouldn't even get an opportunity to be concluded before they dragged me out of my house. So if that's what would happen to me, and we all know that's what would happen to me if I were to say something that's stupid, something that's that out of keeping with my character, especially my desire that no one gets harmed, including us, that if I were to say something like that, I would be gone. So that's something you have to consider when you make these decisions. If I were to put this article on the screen, given that I am targeted by the anti-whites, I can very easily see the anti-whites at YouTube saying, he's using somebody else's material. He doesn't have permission from them. And don't bother. Yes, I know. I mean, in this article itself, we're going to be talking about something that is called entrapment. But I know that there's fair use and all of that. That wouldn't matter. You know, they don't give a damn about the rules. They would just say, this is somebody we want to take out. This is close enough to a good enough excuse, and therefore we're pulling it down. So we see Ryan WH super chatting with $4.99. Thank you so much, my good brother. The guy you retweeted last, Goob, is giving good advice to your fans on how to spread your tweets. Good stuff, NWG. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. And are you Goob? That would be splendid. It'd be a brilliant move if you were. If Laurel says, if no white guilt talks, you best listen. Thank you. That's very sweet of you. Thank you for that. Yeah, if you all have any comments to make, I do have all of the normal routes up for super chatting. If you want to super chat to make sure that your comment or question is read, I'll be sure to get at it. If anybody is actually, let me get a bit of a poll here. Is anybody? I guess Irish Rose was in the UK. Is anybody here in Europe normally unable to see the stream on No White Guilt channel and able to see it now? Because I'm learning I'm getting mostly mixed messages. Some are saying I can now see the past 3 shows. Others are saying still can't see anything. So I see Sue82 is here. Great to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. Maybe I'm coming in at the right hour. Bad Goy, who does a live at 3 a.m.? I need sleep. Have a hard day in a few hours, but I like your show. Thank you so much, brother. Well, listen, this is going to be, I hope, a short one. We're going to go through this article quickly, and then you can watch tomorrow. Let me get a drink. All right. We have a super chat from Wyoming Atheist, $10. Thank you so much. Didn't write anything, but as I say, saying a lot to the anti-whites, especially at almost 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, right outside of Washington, D.C. Ryan, WH, $4.99. Thank you so much. No, I'm not him. Frankly, I think Goob is a silly name. Well, all right, but we do like the advice that Goob gave about sharing my tweets. They are getting some traction lately. Maybe this is evidence that these governments, the United States, etc., are turning their attention on these other groups, these other ideologies, and they are going to. I'll get a bit of a reprieve. Who knows? We'll keep our eyes open on that. Hugo is here. Great to see you. Train Kelby, great to see you. Daryl is here. All right, let me make sure. And remember, yeah, if anybody has any information on whether or not this transmission on No White Guilt is making its way into any of the European countries, please let me know. Looks like we have Vivian super chatting by way of Ko-fi. $2. Thank you so much. That is splendid. I love your avatar. Thank you very much, Vivian. Let's see. And oh no, that was actually on Cash App, and we are clean on Ko-fi. So we will get rolling here. I'm going to check. I want to say hello to people who are watching on Periscope and Twitch, VK, Facebook, DLive, YouTube's, and I don't know if Mixer is working. If any of you have a Mixer account, if you could jump over there and see if Mixer is playing. They've been having issues. Even though I have been, at least for the time being, given permission to stream there. It keeps resetting, I guess I should say. All right, so let's talk about this. Let me take a look at this gardening channel, which, by the way, I was out in the garden today. The weather is just beginning to cool off here outside of the nation's capital in the United States. And so a lot of the plants, they begin to thrive again. Certainly the tall fescue grass that I have begins to thrive again, which is lovely. And I have some squirrels that are making some trouble. So I might be doing a squirrel catch and release program, which is the only kind of catch and release I will allow. And otherwise, at the border and in our nation's cities and the like, the catch and release is very problematic. But I will be doing a gardening show in the very near future because I want to get out there while things are still in bloom. I see Sally is here. Great to see you. Outrageously inoffensive is here. Great to see you. European Truth. Is anybody... Sally says, can't get into entropy. Well, you know what? Thank you for mentioning that because I haven't opened it yet. So let me do that right now so that you all can get into entropy. And I just have to do a couple of clicks and we will be rolling over there. Thank you for mentioning it, even if it was without intending to inform me. Yep, and it looks like it is working, so it will be up right now. Entropy, the chthonic link with No White Guilt, / No White Guilt at the end, and it is now up and running. If you want to jump on over to Entropy to watch the stream, ask questions and the like. And we are going to move right into this article. Kansas soldier accused of giving out bomb-making instructions, talking about attacks. A 24-year-old soldier based at Fort Riley has been charged in federal court in Topeka with using social media to send instructions on how to make bombs triggered by cell phones, according to federal prosecutors in Kansas. PFC Jarrett Smith has been charged with 1 count of distributing information related to explosives and weapons of mass destruction. Now, pay close attention to those words, ladies and gentlemen, because we just were reading in the DHS document and from the mouth of McAneenan the wedding of the words such as targeted violence and weapons of mass destruction. And remember that targeted violence is also language that they determine is violence. So wedding the words weapons of mass destruction, and we immediately see a charge 2 days later of weapons of mass destruction. The U.S. Attorney for the District of Kansas announced in a news release on Monday. So very important, very important. And when this guy that was arrested in Maryland, this other soldier that was arrested in Maryland, and let me also dispel this idea that you have this slew of soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, etc., Coast Guard that are just waiting to mount this resistance. That is hogwash. It is a fool's belief. And it is a fool's errand if you make any decisions on that, based on that idea, because there aren't any. These are isolated individuals. And yes, the other claim that, of course, was immediately made was, oh, the story is not real. The individual is not real. There was no person by this name. That person was real. The others who have been arrested since then were real. This guy is real. These are isolated individuals who are thinking about taking on the United States government, motivated potentially in part by online individuals who are telling them that everything will fall quite easily, like a set of dominoes, if you merely take out a few cell phone towers. Good God. In addition to making bombs, Smith allegedly discussed plans to bomb a major American news network and mentioned Democratic presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke as a possible target, according to the court's documents. Smith, an infantry soldier, joined the Army in June 2017. His first duty station was at Fort Bliss. Well, he won't be blissful, spending the rest of his life in jail. He was transferred to Fort Riley in July. The FBI received information in March about a Facebook user ID that belonged to Smith. Smith allegedly had provided information on how to make improvised explosives, or IEDs, according to an FBI investigator affidavit. Now, how does the FBI know, ladies and gentlemen, that Smith is providing? How do they know who Smith is? How do they know he's providing information about how to make explosive devices? They don't put their fingers in the air, lick their finger and put it in the air, and then follow where the wind blows to look for individuals who might be willing to commit some sort of violence. They set up traps for them. They set up communities for them. They go to communities where they know they congregate. And then they insert undercover agents or narcs, or they recruit and press into service individuals who are already in those circles, trusted individuals, people who have something to hide, people who have some sort of weakness. I remember the old stories reading about back in the old days where they would go to trailer parks, the FBI, and they would get these individuals and they would say, look, we'll give you whatever you want. We just want you to go into this group here, Aryan Nations or whatever it was. We want you to just go in, and we want you to suggest some criminality in the group there, and whatever you want. And the kinds of things that we're talking about low IQ imbeciles, and the kind of things they want. I remember one story, the guy said he wanted a double wide trailer. I mean, could you imagine setting your sights so high? He wanted a double wide trailer and a gold watch. That is what he said. I will sell my soul to you for: a double wide trailer and a gold watch. And the FBI never came through for him. He did what they asked of him, traveled around the country, going into these different communities, building up a reputation as somebody who was legitimate. And the FBI never made good, never gave him the double wide trailer, never gave him the gold watch. There are many stories like this. This was back in the day. They're doing the exact same thing today. The reason the FBI knew that Smith was providing information on how to create or build improvised explosive devices is because he was being asked for that information by the FBI, by people undercover, whether they were agents or people who had been pressed into service. The things I'm telling you now are extremely important. They may save someone you know, because I know the kind of people that would be listening to No White Guilt and be working on going free and serving white well-being would not be the kind of people that would engage in something so idiotic. Think back to how, I think it was Weaver was originally entrapped, asked to cut a shotgun down, and he didn't know what the legal limit was. And so the undercover agent told him a length that was too short. This is how the story originally was, and it, let me just say, may or may not be true. There was a lawsuit. I believe Weaver won, and against the federal government. You all can look for yourself, but entrapment is illegal and done all of the time. So the guy that, if you think you're one of these, you believe the idea that you're going to take America down by blowing up 7 feet of a railroad track, the guy you're talking to is wearing a badge. Not literally, but he's wearing a badge. Smith also allegedly spoke about his interest. And by the way, you're not doing anything for our people if you're wasting all of your time learning how to make a cell phone detonating bomb. You're not doing a thing for our people. Think about how many message boards you could go to and spread this curative contagion. Think about how many books that you could purchase and distribute, leaflets you could distribute, people you could talk to, and the time it takes to scurry around in the darkness like a rat, trying to figure out how to make a bomb that potentially you'll just kill yourself building anyhow. It is absolutely inane. Smith also allegedly spoke about his interest in traveling to Ukraine to fight with a paramilitary group called the Azov Battalion, according to the affidavit. Smith was connected via social media with an American who had traveled to the Ukraine. Why do they say the Ukraine? To Ukraine, and fought with another group, the right sector, between 2017 and 2019, according to the affidavit. The two met in person on one occasion in El Paso, according to the charges. Facebook communications received by the FBI allegedly showed the man's mentorship of Smith, as Lang prepared Smith to join the fighting in Ukraine. The two had been in contact prior to Smith enlisting in the Army. Smith allegedly said in June 2016 that if he couldn't find a slot in Ukraine, he would enlist in the Army. So as we see, and as I said before, as is typical of those who are drawn to such a message, they are already not quite well. And that's one of the reasons that makes an argument that is legitimate to a lot of our people, our good people, white folks who are working in law enforcement, working in the FBI, working in the CIA, working in DHS, and then they find themselves surrounded by vipers. Nonetheless, though, when the argument is made, hey, there are mentally ill people out there, so we have to set up these honeypots. We have to set up this trap to draw them in, entrap them, and then imprison them before they kill innocent people. That's a completely legitimate argument. The problem is that it's just a pretext to actually just get rid of socio-political opposition, those who care about white well-being. So it's a legitimate argument that is being used as a pretext to ensnare otherwise good people. But you can see here, this is an individual who just wanted to go kill people. If this is accurate, of course, who knows if any of this will end up being found to be the case in court. So we will leave it up to the judge and or jury, and who knows if that will even be legitimate. Where is law in the West anymore? Anyhow, how many times do we have to see FBI, even the highest ranking FBI agents, committing the most egregious crimes, and they just walk away, whereas one of us jaywalks and we are given life sentences? The cultural oncologist super chatting with $5. Thank you so much. Writes, never assume that all of our peers are genuine. Violence can't undo cultural damage. The flyer that said Islam is right about women did more for us. Well, it certainly did, and it did very little. I mean, honestly, it's a great laugh. I actually, with another individual, woman in the cause who is educated in marketing, we created a totally unrelated leaflet the day after that became public, and that is something that we'll make available on the website when it's rebuilt. But yeah, the Islam is right about women flyer causes a cultural jamming that at a minimum is or almost a maximum actually is good for a laugh. And the ones that are coming out now, Jews are right about white people, those are all good for a laugh. They're not going to spread white well-being. You're not going to wake anybody up with that unless you want to try, unless you want to use such a leaflet and then maybe put nowhiteguilt.org at the bottom, and just to get people to say, who are these folks? And then they can come, and some of those who come will come to go free. So that's how it could be successful. As it is, just as like a little, it's like something that a teenager would do. And if I were still 13, I would have probably laughed my ass off. But yeah, it did do more than violence. All violence is going to do is harm us. So any acts of violence. Now, you are always right to defend yourself. So that's not violence. Defending yourself is not violence. So I am absolutely against violence and absolutely for self-defense. So let's proceed. In December 2018, Smith allegedly led a chat group on Facebook with Lang, included discussing Smith's ability to build IEDs. I got knowledge of IEDs for days, Smith allegedly said, for days. And we can make cell phone IEDs in the style of the Afghans. Now, what does this tell you? He got knowledge of IEDs for days. FOR days. This tells you that Smith doesn't really know what he's talking about. This tells you that Smith is a neophyte. He's talking big. He's talking way out of his league. He's letting his ego write checks that his body can't cash. We see this all the time with guys at bars when they think they want to fight. It's always the guys who talk the loudest about fighting, who are terrible at fighting, who have never been in a fight. So that's exactly what's happening with Smith here. Smith allegedly went on to provide how to make the cell phone detonator that, according to the FBI bomb technician, was accurate, according to the affidavit. Now, how many times does the FBI have to be caught lying? They're lab fabricating. This may or may not be true, but you all can go and research whether or not the FBI lab years ago was caught fabricating. I can't even remember the total. It might have been hundreds of cases where they had fabricated data and information needed to support cases for the prosecuting attorneys. It may or may not be true. Look into it for yourself. So my guess here is that the FBI bomb technician was saying about the detonator that it may be accurate in that a cell phone can be used. I mean, they're going to stretch. Remember, they're always going to dilate the law. So you never get close to the edge of the law. A member of the chat asked about the explosive, and Smith allegedly replied with a description of how to make an explosive material using the head of matches. Smith's instructions, and by the way, for the YouTube censors, this is in an article in a newspaper. I am not giving out information that was not shared and is in public in the FBI's affidavit. Smith's instructions are accurate if the right type of matches were used, according to the affidavit. So my guess is that Smith knew that matches could be used, but he hadn't selected the right matches. The FBI was dilating the law to ensure that Smith will be able to be used to teach you all, to teach all of us a lesson, to scare the white public out of any care or concern for white well-being. Because if you care about white well-being, well, you're going to be surrounded by people who want to create cell phone-driven bombs, and you'll end up in jail for 80 years like I'm sure Smith will. Smith allegedly engaged a confidential source on August 19 in an online chat group and said he was looking for radicals like himself. Smith allegedly discussed a plan of conducting an attack within the United States. So he went off into some other chat group, one they don't name, probably because it's one of the ones that were named in the DHS document. They were happy to discuss Facebook, but when they talked about Smith moving on, they left that out. That is one of those read between the line moments, ladies and gentlemen. He allegedly talked about killing Antifa members and destroying nearby cell towers or a local news station, according to the affidavit. 2 days later, Smith allegedly told the confidential source that the headquarters of a major American news network would be a suggested target using a vehicle bomb, according to the affidavit. Smith allegedly described how to make the bomb and set it off. But according to an FBI bomb technician, Smith's instructions would not have resulted in a viable explosive device. Why is that? Because Smith was talking colloquially out of his ass. That's not going to stop them from putting him in jail forever. On September 20, Smith allegedly exchanged messages on the app Telegram. Now, they mentioned Telegram with an FBI undercover investigator about making various types of bombs. When the investigator commented that one of the bombs described used household items as components, Smith allegedly said, making AK-47s out of expensive parts is cool, but imagine if you were going to Walmart instead of a gun store to buy weapons, close quote. Smith also allegedly described in detail how the investigator, let me reread that. Smith also allegedly described in detail how, to the investigator, well, that's actually how it's written, ladies and gentlemen. I thought I was having some sort of moment, but it is actually written that way. This is equality working its wonder in the mainstream media, in the regime's media. Okay. Discussed in detail how to build a bomb that could be triggered by calling a cell phone. Now, he was telling an undercover FBI agent how to do this. Be very careful with the fully armed device, Smith allegedly warned the investigator, according to the affidavit. There have been cases where Middle Eastern insurgents, this is Smith talking, built these bombs only for them to detonate prematurely because of telemarketers or people with wrong numbers who unwittingly called the device and ended up accidentally blowing up the insurgents. Well, talk about really hating a telemarketer. My God, don't you already hate those people enough already? They just call, and then you answer, and they start talking, and they won't stop talking, and you say you don't have time, and they just keep talking over you. How would you like to have them call and blow you into pieces? Smith allegedly asked the investigator who their target was. The investigator replied that it was a Texas politician, possibly someone in the federal government. Later on, he mentioned the possibility of a liberal Texas mayor. Listen to that, ladies and gentlemen. This is the FBI saying to Smith, This is the guy on the other end of that encrypted line, folks, saying that he has a Texas politician in line, someone in the federal government that should be murdered according to this FBI agent. This sounds a lot like what happened with Matt Hale when his bodyguard was pressed into service by the federal government and was by Matt's side for, 2 years or something, and finally started collecting information for the government. This is why you always say, this is my admonition to you all, you always talk, and this is where your heart should be nonetheless, but always make sure that you phrase everything that you say in a way that can be played out loud or read out loud in front of a judge, in front of a jury. Never make jokes that you might think, because of your sense of humor, are hilarious, that when read to a jury is going to put you away, because they're not going to see the humor in it. You're not going to be able to say that was just a joke. Never say anything that could be easily interpreted to be something other. Always clarify. That doesn't mean that every sentence that comes out of your mouth has to be perfect. It just means that if you say something that could be taken in several ways, perhaps one of those ways could be endorsement of violence or the like, that you then clarify what you actually mean. Don't ever feel embarrassed about saying, let me clarify what I just said. So this guy, Matt Hale's bodyguard, number one guy, kept suggesting to Matt to murder a federal judge. And in audio, secret recording after secret recording, Hale said no, no, no. And then finally one time he didn't say no. Now, I don't know exactly what he ended up saying. I think I heard that he said nothing. This may or may not be true. Nonetheless, it was on the basis of that Matt has now spent almost the totality of his life in prison. So, this is what they're doing. This FBI agent is telling this Smith, I have this. Now, how many times have some of you out there heard people talk big? They're going to talk big. They're not going to put up with it anymore. Well, when you hear somebody talking big, you ask them to stop or you ask them to leave. You can understand. I totally understand how angry people get. I get very angry myself. But that does not legitimate any sort of statement that will bring shame onto the cause, censorship onto the cause, and land you and perhaps some more of the participants in the cause in jail. The heat in this pot in which we're cooking is getting turned up rapidly. And that is a good thing, because it's going to be able to bring more of our brothers and sisters to the cause, to help them go free. But at the same time, it means that we have to be more careful about the language we use and who we allow to be in our presence, who we talk to. Now, this is, of course, mostly for people who you all will be talking to, because you all are not going to be this obtuse. The investigator asked Smith if he had, listen to this line, the investigator, the stooge from the federal government, asked Smith if he had anyone down in Texas who would be, quote, a good fit for fire, destruction, and death. Smith said, outside of Beto, I don't know enough people that would be relevant enough to cause a change if they died. That was Smith's reply. Smith was arrested on Saturday. Smith allegedly said he knows how to make IEDs and routinely provides people how to make the bombs in online chat rooms. Notice how, again, they aren't saying those chat rooms, because some of you out there are using them and the FBI is listening and watching. So they're not telling you, they were happily told you Facebook, they even told you Telegram. They left out all of these other ones on purpose. Those will be redacted before they make it to the public. Said he was told people regularly how to make bombs in online chat rooms. Even if they tell him, they will use the knowledge to harm others. He does that to cause chaos. And if that chaos results in deaths, it doesn't affect him, he allegedly told the FBI. Says here Smith faces up to 20 years in federal prison, a fine of $250,000. I'd be willing to bet that he's going to be in there a lot longer than that. So let's see if you all have any statements or questions. I can speak to them, answer anything perhaps, and then we'll wrap it up tonight. Looks like on the familiar alternative, we had Laurel, the kind and wonderful Laurel, donating $10 to the cause of white well-being and the salvation of our little boys and little girls. And she writes, for a bag of White Wellbeing coffee. Thank you so much. I survive on that coffee. Few hours of sleep a night, and that's how we're able to fight for white well-being. Thank you so much, Laurel. Zero Talent, super chatting $2. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Seaver Hamlin, for moderating. And thank you, No White Guilt, for streaming. You're most welcome. And a big, indeed, boisterous thank you to Seaver for being here with us. We know that the troublemakers come into our conversations, our live chats, in order to do several things, one of which is to drive wedges. We just saw this document came out, and perhaps I can get somebody to send it to me, where the government is talking about, it's the instructions, essentially, of how to drive wedges into the white positive sphere to divide and to weaken the sphere. So that's one of the reasons why such people show up. They want to drive a wedge. They want to take arguments, disagreements that already exist, and kindle those things, pour gasoline on those disagreements, so that we end up pushing away from each other, making ourselves that much weaker as a result. They also engender from whole cloth arguments that didn't exist, and they get people fighting over those for the purpose of dividing us and weakening us. Ladies and gentlemen, all that matters. We had a lot of discussion a couple of streams ago about a topic that I really should address, and I think I will address it on a upcoming Going Free. I will just briefly say here, this topic of circumcision. And this can be a topic that could divide us, could divide one from the other. And it absolutely shouldn't. Anyone who is willing to sever him or herself from others in this cause for white well-being, specifically this specific sphere of white well-being inside of the total sphere of white positivity, anyone who's willing to separate on the basis of anything like this, anything that otherwise is beyond our decision or ability to control, is a fool, and we ultimately don't need you. I hope that you will reconsider. We can resolve all of these issues once we recapture our destiny. Religious issues, medical issues, personal right issues, etc. We can resolve all of these things once amicably, once we recapture our destiny. I have no doubt in that. Disagreeing over these things now and deciding that you're not going to fight for white well-being because the person over there is okay with circumcision or endorses circumcision because it's their religious practice or what have you, saying that you're not going to fight alongside or struggle alongside that person is, as I said before, like two soldiers at the Alamo deciding, well, they're not going to fight the Mexicans coming in because they're instead going to they're going to argue over what the future economy of Texas should look like. It is the dumbest thing imaginable. So set these differences aside. This is a sphere, a world where we will have, we can say it's a big tent. We will have a lot of disagreements on what governance should look like, what economy should look like, what all of these different things, how counties should be run, how relationships between men and women should be run. We can have a lot of agreement. We can have a lot of disagreement. What matters now is that we come together in the calls for white well-being to go free and to recapture our destiny. We will be able to resolve all of these differences. I have no doubt about that. But the other thing that I would talk about when it comes to topics, it's not just the topic of circumcision, but there are many of these ancillary issues that folks come into the white positive sphere, and then they decide, this is really hard. This standing up for white well-being. So I feel the pressure of the condemnation as a heretic in my family. I feel the pressure, the condemnation of the people at work or in society for being a heretic, for standing up for white well-being. So I'm going to be really sly, and I'm going to take on this other issue that isn't quite as heretical, and I'll still be able to hang out with those people who care about white well-being. I'll still be able to feel like I'm a revolutionary for something grand and just as white well-being. But in reality, I'm really a coward. I found this way out. I found this other little argument to discuss instead, to make that my primary thing, because it is not quite as objectionable to society at large. Folks, we can talk about this another time. I'm going to see about this issue here tonight, and we're going to check out for tonight. But this is cowardice. You are harming no one but yourself. Well, you're harming our people by way of harming yourself. And besides, when it comes to a subject matter like circumcision, if you're not able to see this, when you start a socio-political discussion with someone and the first thing that comes out of your mouth are infant penises and what should happen with them, they want nothing to do with you anymore. You have just seemed like the strangest person on planet Earth, and they want you to get away. That is how normal people see you. So if you need me to tell you that, I've done it now. And so don't begin with infant penises and what should be done with them. So let's see what else, as if that subject matter was, let's see what else anybody had to say. I'll check on these super chats really quick to make sure we haven't missed anybody. And looks like Tipsy super chatting $2 on YouTube. I don't think I saw this. $2 Australian. Thank you so much. Other side of planet Earth. But that's the great white ring that we circle the world with. Tipsy says, I feel so refreshed since I started going free. Amen to you. Thank you so much, my dear friend, for writing that, for that, so much more for those words than those dollars. That is very meaningful to me. It warms my heart. It's meaningful to all of those who are new to going free, to see things like that. Ladies and gentlemen, giving your testimony on how going free is benefiting you is a magnificent thing to do for white well-being. If that is all you can do, then that is a momentous thing. It is fabulous. Thank you. Did I read a Wyoming Atheist? $10. Thank you so much. If I did, if I forgot, then I apologize. So $10, I believe I did though. Ryan WH super chatting $4.99. Oh, that I did get that earlier. Okay, Ryan saying that he was not Goob, finds the name to be silly. IJB at $3. Do you follow Nick Fuentes? I don't. By follow, I guess you mean I regularly watch his shows. No, I'm unfortunately far too busy. I have work and I have everything I'm doing for you all, everything I'm doing for white well-being, for our people. In fact, as soon as it's almost 11:30 here, as soon as I jump off the mic here, I'm going to swivel the chair the other direction. And for those of you who have seen my workstation, you'll know what that looks like. I'm going to swivel my chair the other direction, and I'm going to get right back to work on the second edition of Go Free so that I can make that available to you all. It is 100 times more powerful and we are going to be talking about that and the lexicon, the dialectics in the second edition of Go Free with phone calls. We'll have you all calling in. We'll really be able to dig into this and be able to really help each other out of this quicksand that anti-whiteism has put us in. I see HB has shown up. Great to see you. Or perhaps you've been here for more of the show than I've noticed. Great to see you, good brother. Johan is here. Great to see you. Alex, Eternalism. Wonderful people. Roy Danton, super chatting $9.99. Thank you, my good friend. Well, I guess IJB asking, perhaps you're asking more than just, do I follow Nick? I've met Nick. I've seen parts of his shows before. I think he does. He comments on politics, I notice. That's his main thing. I think he does a show 5 days a week. If you have anything else you want to ask about that, tag me in one of the chats, and I should see it. Thank you very much, though, for the question in the super chat. A great Roy Danton, $9.99. Most interesting question about the environment is whether we'll ever get back to those golden days where we didn't have any weapons that could destroy the entire planet. Well, I think we've gone beyond that possibility. They've been created, and I think they are now far more powerful than we even in the public know them to be, which is very often the case, as is perfectly understandable. We don't know how fast the planes actually fly, how fast the boats sail. We don't know the actual speeds or endurance or longevity of any of those things. They are artfully kept and brilliantly and rightly kept from the population at large so that the opposition or potential opposition doesn't get that information. But perhaps there will come a day when we can speculate. We can kind of look forward to an Eden-esque future, a nirvanic future, and we recapture our destiny. We clasp hands and ring the globe with the great white ring, and we don't, with an infantile spasm, reject globalism as though that is something you can possibly reject, any more so than they could reject travel once automobiles were made. I mean, this is moving forward. There's no stopping it. The only question is, do we vector it for our well-being, or is it vectored for our ill-being? So there may come a day when we circle the globe and we have such power, such ability to, I can imagine that there would be, human ingenuity, especially ours, can't be modeled. So we can imagine that there will come a day when there'll be weapons, if you will, that we will create weapons, perhaps defensive weapons, that will negate the use of things like nuclear missiles and the other things that they have now. And that would indeed be the end of it for those weapons. That would create something different, and that would be a context for those people to have to conquer. Looks like we have the cultural oncologist, $5. Never assume that all of our peers are genuine. Oh, we did read that. Thank you very much again for that super chat. Sound Killer, $20. Thank you so very much. No more brother wars. Amen to that. Never again. We should never raise our hands in violence against our own people unless they themselves are anti-white. And in those cases, it is only in self-defense. But never again a brother war. Amen to that. Thank you very much for those good words and that investment of $20 for the welfare and well-being of white little boys and white little girls. Questions. We had one from the bad guy over on Entropy. The only bombs we should be making are seed bombs to grow food on federal land in case of breaking down of order. Well said. We are, Jared George and I, for example, are very much for legitimate prepping. There's nothing, if I had the money, and I don't, but if I had a job that paid enough, I would have a generator and a backup generator and maybe a backup, all running on different fuels. I would definitely have a legitimate prepping scenario all put together. I have what I can have, And I think it's the most important things. I'm not going to give away exactly how things are set up, with how I have things set up, but because we know the anti-whites or victimizers are always listening. But Jared George and I are for, and we will do in the future, some shows on prepping, legitimate prepping, and so that you all and listen to get advice from professionals on this, so that you all can be prepared for outages that are legitimate time spans. It's when folks get into these conversations of surviving the collapse of society that things really get childish. You're not surviving anything. Society collapse, and unless people like me recapture society and restore order and then come save your ass, unless that happens, you're going to die. I don't care if you know how to run a trout line and skin a buck, you're going to die. They will, mobs of people, you won't have enough bullets, you won't have enough. So we need civilization. We need to be in civilization. We need to be using technology. We need to be, and that doesn't mean that you put your children in front of the iPad and the iPad nannies, they say, and you let them watch this anti-white, unless you're putting them in front of the iPad and they're watching No White Guilt and Jared George and PhilosophiCat and the material that we make moving forward. And I think, who was it that is, what's her name? Holly. Oh, I wish I could remember her name. She's currently working on a children's book, and Ash wrote a book for children. So unless they're looking at that sort of thing, and I even have some outlines for children's books. Unless they're looking at that, then they should not be on the iPad being tutored by the anti-whites. Let me see. Fernell writes, the dragon's breath shells. Yes, those are fantastic toys. If you like to shoot, if you ever like to go out to shoot, target shoot, and you have a shotgun, and you have access to these novelty rounds, they're sometimes referred to. You can get dragon's breath. That comes in a variety of styles. Sometimes, like the one that I had, shoots out these searing, glowing sparks. It's just like fireworks. That's really, it's fireworks for your gun. HB writes, I found an old tweet from August 25th, 2018, congratulating you on reaching 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. Well, thank you very much for that. Hopefully we'll be able to make up some more ground. If things do get freed up a little bit, then we may well be able to start climbing in subscriber count again, which would be splendid to reach a great new and broadening audience with this message of going free and white well-being. Bring them into the fold. Folks, I suspect that in the coming months and years, an increasing number of those in the white positive sphere, but not in the sphere of white well-being, will be subsumed by the work that we're doing, because they're going to quickly learn that all of these legacy ideas and this vernacular, et cetera, from the past is going to be something that is going to get them into a lot of trouble. When we hear from the first person that they went to the airport and they were not allowed to fly in the continental United States, things will change immediately. And I can tell you right now that that day is coming. So one more quick look at whether or not anyone has super chatted. I don't want to miss anybody. And if anybody has any questions about this soldier Smith, who is now going to go to jail because he had this wild idea that he was going to take down the United States with some cell phone bombs, and ended up talking on some of these so-private networks to undercover law enforcement. We have that you could ask about, or anything else in the... Okay, it looks like we have all of the super chats, I believe, have been read and answered or spoken to. We have no other questions on entropy. And so let me Says Sherry, saw your name came and went. There's DJ. No White Guilt channel is now available in the UK. Well, that's what I was looking for earlier. I didn't know if anybody answered. That's amazing. Now let's just see. Let me ask you, DJ, while you're there, can you see the last, say, 4 videos on the No White Guilt channel? Are you still able to see those, or have those disappeared? Sterling Price is here. Great. JK160 is here. Good to see you. There's Luke. There's Zyklon and D. Alex. I might have said hello to Alex earlier. FS says, get a solar array. Well, that'll be something that will be interesting to look into, because every time I've looked into when we actually do the shows on prepping, every time I've looked into these solar arrays, I discovered that they are they vastly underperform the claims that are made, and then they go bad much more quickly than they are said to go bad. Okay, Alex, talking to Train Kelby, says, I can understand his distancing himself from anyone who is explicitly a white advocate. Not sure if you're talking about. I can understand if they had bad optics, but he wouldn't even want to talk with Jason. Not sure what that conversation was about, but I will speak to it if you tag me. HB did say he had just gotten here. All right. Well, you got here right here at the end, brother. So it's good to see you. I'm going to be getting back. There's Tree of Wisdom. Great to see you. Past Fizzin. Tree of Wisdom says you should just avoid mentioning the divisive topics, such as circumcision. Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about these things in private, yeah. But these sort of claims that, well, if you're for this or not for that, or you don't oppose this, then it's all, no, I can't work with you anymore. This sort of stuff is asinine and childish. We need to be convivial with each other. We need to be able to work together. We don't even need to really like each other. I have worked with people for White Wellbeing whom I otherwise would not associate with, not because they're doing anything illegal, but because perhaps they were just crass. Their language was too coarse or what have you. And they were going to pass out leaflets, and I was passing out leaflets, and we passed out leaflets together. This is the kind of thinking we have to have. We have to be able to get along to reach this objective of white well-being. So very well stated. All right, let's see. Any final things? And Sally Lacey, wow, I'm in the UK and I can see you. How come previously you were banned by the EU? Well, what's interesting about that was, I don't know. I guess was it all of the EU countries? There were a great many countries. I had people contacting me from, and it was just like one right after the other. There's Machiavellia sucks. Scotty Nick is here. Arthur's here. Elemental Metal, great to see you. Ursa Major is here. Yeah, I was Susie, good night to you. Have a good night. We'll see you next time. There's Vivian, small donation on Cash App for listening. Yes, I got that donation. I mentioned it earlier. Thank you so much. And said I loved your avatar. Yep, I see it over there. Oh, and a big thank you to DB Cooper. Don't know if he's listening, and I hope he hears this, though. But DB Cooper has earmarked $100 of books to go to No White Guilt books to go to our people in South Africa. So a big thank you, big round of applause to DB Cooper for that kind contribution. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, don't think about these donations like you're hearing them come from people like Mr. Pie. $100 from Mr. Pie, he could wipe his rear with every day. He could only use $100 bills, and it would never make a dent. He would never notice it missing. these people, these good folks are working for a living. They're getting in trucks. They're getting behind a computer. They're typing for some overbearing prig who leans over them and leering about the work wanting to be done now or done yesterday. And those dollars count. Those minutes count. Those hours count. And so I deeply appreciate it. Thank you very much, DB Cooper. I deeply appreciate you all for everything you do, including those financial donations. Train says, love Mr. NWG. I just love the man. Thank you so much. Train, you're magnificent. All right. Yes, big round of applause. Samantha Fox is here. Great to see you. 41 BMC, great to see you. Yes, HB is right. It's a great gift for our people. Just imagine that there are going to be, and such a, this was, he decided to do this before I posted that video of that poor soul being murdered on the streets of South Africa. And folks, if you're curious, I blurred out on Twitter, I blurred out this man because this is in keeping with my character. This is a person's final moments alive. And so I had somebody ask about the blurring or something, and I know the original video, it wasn't blurred out, and the guy's body, and there was writing on the screen about it was a person in South Africa. He was murdered for being white. He stripped naked, and it said all of that, and therefore some of the words were lost by me putting the blurring effect over this man and his final moments of life as he's begging for life. It would be, his life would not be in vain if we could show it, his final moments of life, in all clarity, and it would reach into the hearts of many millions of our people. Then his life and that image would not be in vain. But this is not going to reach millions and millions of people. It would just be some sort of sickness to share this poor soul's final moments of begging before that absolute anti-white monster brought that cinder block down on his, crushing his chest. And his lungs would have been punctured by his broken ribs. The pain would have been unimaginable in those final moments. And to have these people in the clothes of civilization, not in thug wear, but in slacks and school uniform looking attire, and the normal attire of those living in a city, nothing outrageous, to have these people descend as though possessed by Satan himself onto this soul. And what I wrote in that tweet is that this is not the ghetto. This is what happens when Western kind turns their country over to anti-whites. This has always been the case. It has always been the case. And it always will be the case. And that will be the final thing. Let me see here. Sue says it was great to catch most of the chat tonight. I will tune in while in the hospital because I can't stand the boredom. Well, Sue, I hope you, whatever it is that you're in the hospital for, that you are in and out of there as quickly as possible, and that you're quickly into the healing phase and back at whatever you're doing and able to join us here. Seeing Red says, howdy, brother. Great to see you. Seeing Red, always great participant in our community. The Cultural Oncologist, super chatting $5. Quick reminder, I had to say goodbye to my dad on Saturday. If your parents are still here, give them a hug and tell them you love them. In honor of your father, my dear friend, we will wrap up the show. That is truer words could not have been spoken. Our heart goes out to you for your loss. Ladies and gentlemen, reach out to those whom you love, the cultural oncologist, as he's or she is mentioning here. Don't let them go without letting them know that you love them. And one of the best ways you can do that is to help them go free. Tell them you love them. Tell them that's the reason why you are sharing this message of going free, so that they can heal themselves, so that they can grow, so that they can move toward their potential. You will never forgive yourself if you don't take the time to do right by them. You do them no justice by humoring their anti-white ideas. Instead, tell them you love them and introduce them to going free. Cultural oncologist, thank you very much for that super chat. Heart goes out to you. And in memory of your father, let's all go free.